Good evening, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please. On behalf of Ahmedabad Management Association, it is my absolute privilege to welcome Dr. Anand Ranganathan here today. Just before today's talk, we had the privilege of doing almost maybe 1 hour or 45-minute podcast where we got to learn just incredible level of knowledge, incredible level of interest that Anandji has. And India Rising is going to be a very great speech that he's going to give. And whatever is missed, hopefully you can see in this podcast, because we talked about a lot of things. You know, we started with statistics, of course, that India being a very growing economy, fifth largest economy in the world. We are growing at 6 to 7% annually. We are soon to become the top 3 economy. We are supposed to be Viksit Bharat. That's the program, developed nation by 2047. And all this talk everybody knows, but how do we get there? What are the challenges? How will India rise to this? And what are some of the very unique aspects that come from someone like Anandji, who is not only we know him as a commentator, but he's such a great scientist, a distinguished scientist, respected author, and influential public commentator. So a little bit about him, although you need no introduction, sir. Anandji was educated at the University of Cambridge. He serves as professor at the Special Center for Molecular Medicine at Jawaharlal Nehru University. His research in directed evolution and pathogenesis, especially in TB and malaria. We also had a chance to talk about, is India ready for the next pandemic? And he has some fantastic views on that. His work has been published in several internationally recognized scientific journals. He's an articulate and widely followed voice on science, society, and national issues. He contributes regularly to major media platforms and serves as the consulting editor of Swarajya. An accomplished author, he has written 5 books. I think his latest book about the forgotten Indian scientists is something that we all must read. I'm going to buy a copy right away. His journey reflects curiosity, integrity, and the pursuit of truth. These are values that we hold deeply at AMA, which is what we explain. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you, sir, Royal Festival. Thank you very much, and we are looking forward for this speech.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It gives me absolute great pleasure and an honor to be here. And thank you so much to the organizers, to AMA, to Sri, and most of all to Mr. Sarabhai for that very complimentary introduction. If even 2% of that could be told to my wife, I wouldn't be in a situation. I'll give you a phone number, sir, please. पूरे देश का malnourishment मैंने संभाल रखा है अभी. But it's absolute honor, and it was such a pleasure to speak with you, at a podcast just previously. And when I come back to Gujarat again and again, I don't want to go back to Delhi. So it's a double pleasure to be here. As far as the topic of today is concerned, I thought I'll give you a brief glimpse of the kind of inflection point we as a country are at. And everyone's talking about Viksit Bharat, Viksit Bharat. This is the new phrase you can say. 2014 was Swachh Bharat, and then this, that. Now it is Viksit Bharat, and everyone possibly rightfully believes that by 2047 we would be Viksit Bharat. But as they say, there is many a slip between the cup and the lip, and I don't want us to have that slip again, because I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s, and many of you are. And we've seen India has been at many inflection points before. And we somehow always end up in a situation where the plane is just about to take off, and suddenly the pilot informs us that, ladies and gentlemen, there is some small snag, and you park the plane by the hangar, and then there we go again for the next couple of decades or more. And I think the reason for that is that the fundamentals of success. And it's understandable as well, because as the adage goes, success hides failures, and if you're a politician, there's one thing that you can be sure of: you'll never mention your failures. In fact, just yesterday, you heard, some prominent politicians saying, so what if we got just 4 seats out of 240? We're still doing very well, which is the right spirit to have. But, yes, umeed pe duniya kaayam hai. But the fact of the matter is, as a country, we need to identify. And I think that's very important, to find out what are the fundamentals of success. And I dare say that we falter at every step, at every inflection point, because we are possibly in a hurry, young country, relatively, to reach that point where we can compare ourselves or be in that kind of club of countries that call themselves developed countries, that have a GDP per capita of upwards of $30,000. And at the same time, we are beset with problems that somehow are oblivious to us. So for the next 45 minutes, before I throw it open to wonderful interaction that I really want to have with all of you, I want to talk about this aspect. And let me begin by talking about whether we have been successful or not. And there are parameters that define a nation's journey, whether it is successful or whether it is not successful. What is the trend? What is the slope of the trend? All those things are there. They're obviously developed by policymakers and scientists. But above and beyond, there are 3 or 4 concrete parameters on which you define a nation's success. And being from the area of science and health, you can say, those parameters are of paramount importance to me. So if we look at our journey since the last 75 years, you look at a few parameters, what we were and what we are right now, whether we can call ourselves a success. Let me give you a few defining parameters. When we got independence in 1947, our life expectancy was 32 years. 32 years. Today it is upwards of 75 years. So yes, we've seen success. In 1947, when we got independence, our literacy rate was 12%. Today it is upwards of 81%. In 1947, our poverty rate was 72%. Today it is 4.5%. And the most troubling, in 1947, our IMR, which is infant mortality rate, was 160. That meant that out of every 1,000 babies born when we got independence, 160 did not live to see 1 year. Today it is 24. And in some states like Kerala, it has bettered even Eastern European countries at 6 or 7. So yes, we've been relatively successful if you look at the parameters. And if you were to scrunch the timeline, not look at 75 years, but look at last 10 years, I would say we've been stunningly successful. Let me give you a few parameters. For example, in 2014, the percentage of Indian population that was multidimensionally poor, that's the new metric that they use, multidimensional poverty, that includes sort of health, wealth, prosperity, and other educational parameters, including the HDI, was 29%. Today, it is 11%. We have literally pulled 250 million Indians in the last 10 years out of abject poverty. I would say that is stunningly successful. In the last 10 years, for example, in 2014, our GDP per capita was $1,500 US. Today, it is approaching 2,900, almost doubled. 2014, our foreign exchange reserves were $300 billion. Today, it is $705 billion. I would say that is stunningly successful. We had 5 cities that had metro 10 years ago. Now we have 22 cities that have metros. We had 74 airports 10 years ago. We have 150 airports now. 21,000 kilometers of railway lines were electrified in 2014. Now it is 65,000 kilometers of railway lines. And the length of highways that we have built in the last 10 years is half of what we have built in 60 years previous to the last 10 years. That's why I call Nitin Gadkari as alien, not human. He is also alien in some other aspect, because I was watching his podcast and he loves to do podcasts. And in one of the podcasts, he was saying he is a foodie, he loves food, and he was going for bariatric surgery. And he said that just 1 hour before the surgery, he had 5 plates of chola bhaturas. Only aliens will do that. But 2014, we had $7 billion worth of electronics exports. Today, it is upwards of $26 billion. So yeah, we've been stunningly successful. And the wealth generators, creators amongst you, all of you are, of course, in Gujarat. But you would appreciate this. Our AUMs, or assets under management in mutual funds, were 9 lakh crores in 2014. Today, it is 66 lakh crores. Our solar installation capacity was 2 gigawatts in 2014. Today, it touched 100 gigawatts. Stunning success. And one of the most phenomenal aspects of success is that in 2014, we had 350 startups. Today, we have 125,000 startups. Many of you, the youngsters, would acknowledge this as a stunning achievement. So yes, we've been not just relatively successful, we've been stunningly successful. And if you were to scrunch the timeline even further, not 75 years, not 10 years, but the last 1 year, then I would say we've been spectacularly successful. Let me give you a few parameters. Our GST collections have been the highest ever, $270 billion. Number of vehicle sales, highest ever, 25 million. Our income tax payers, highest ever, 104 million. Our central government debt to GDP ratio is one of the lowest at 54%. Our exports have been the highest ever at 825 billion. Our inflation has been the lowest ever at 0.3%. It's incredible. We have, for example, our inequality has been at the lowest ever. That is what is measured by Gini coefficient, and it's 0.25. Our PMI manufacturing has been the highest ever at 59. So we've not just been relatively successful. We've not just been stunningly successful. We've been spectacularly successful. And to cap it all, our Sensex has been at the highest ever at 85,000 in the last 1 year. So many of you will be thinking, what's this fellow talking about, fundamentals of success? We've already reached the pinnacle, There is no glass half full, half empty. Let's not talk about fundamentals of success. You yourself have narrated how spectacularly successful we are. But then I say, why is it that till today, there are 300 million Indians living on 60 rupees a day? Why is it that till today, 100 million children are out of school? Why is it that till today, 34% of all Indian infants under 5 are chronically malnourished and stunted? Why is it that till today, 20% of all poor children have never been vaccinated? Why is it that till today, only 50% of India has network connectivity? Why is it that till today, only 2% of adult Indians pay tax? In the UK, it is 66%. Why is it that till today, 8 million Indian children are into child labor? Why is it that till today, 18 million Indians are in bonded labor? Why is it that till today, India is ranked 111th in World Hunger Index. And why is it that till today, our GDP per capita is ranked 136th, lower than even Sri Lanka, and until a few months ago, even Bangladesh. So clearly, while we've attained relative, stunning, spectacular success, the other side of the story is also important to find out. And I put it to you that the reason why India is a coin of two sides is because we are confused as a nation, as a society, as citizenry, as to what our role should be. And I'll have a show of hands out here. If I were to, for example, ask you, what is that one Indian policy since 1947 that has helped our economy grow the fast? What would you say? Anyone? The youngsters amongst you? You, sir? Just one policy in the last 75 years. The most obvious ones. Yes, although you don't look like a youngster compared to them, but still, you look like a JNU undergraduate, so I'll ask you. Just one. Economic liberalization. Yeah, I'm asking for one, just one. And yes, Jan Dhan Yojana is absolutely right. You have financial inclusivity of 600 million Indians. And when it started, people were poo-pooing it, saying, why do poor Indians need bank accounts? And now you understand the reason for that. Direct cash transfers is just one of the benefits of it. So you're absolutely right. Anything else, the youngster? Yes? Yes, absolutely. Yes, we've spotted someone who does not vote for Congress. Absolutely right. And he will grow up not to be a communist. I congratulate you. Absolutely. Anyone else? Yes. Yeah, UPI, sir. Absolutely right. I mean, right now you have one of the fastest growing markets in the world, and complete credit needs to go to hundreds of billions of transactions every month is because of UPI. Yes, sir. LPG, yes, absolutely right. You're talking of, I suppose, Ujjwala Yojana, 100 million gas connections. Yes. Ayushman Bharat, yes. Economic liberalization. Did you see one thing? Everything that I talked about, that I asked, and the answers were related to finance and the economy. You had the Jan Dhan, you had the economic liberalization, you had the UPI, because I'd framed the question in such a way. What if I were to tell you that the one single state policy since independence that has helped our economy grow the most has got nothing to do with economy at all? It is the midday meal scheme. Every single day, 130 million Indian children go to school. 130 million. And their parents send them to school so that they may have a good education, they may get wiser, but more importantly, they may get healthier. They may get a nutritious food, meal, hot meal, that is today mandated by our Supreme Court to be of a minimum of 430 kilocalories. And that is one policy that has helped grow our economy the most. And the person who thought of it and implemented it, K. Kamraj, he never even went to school. So next time, all of you in our socio-economic strata think, oh, we need a politician who should be an undergraduate, a graduate, a doctor, an engineer, and a management consultant, think again. Here was someone who never even went to school, and he implemented a policy that has helped grow India the most. And this right here is what should be the role of the state. The role of the state is to create a healthier, wealthier, wiser, more adaptable, more flexible workforce. The role of the state is not to use that workforce. The role of the state is to create that workforce and give it to you, the wealth creators, to use it. And this right here is the problem, that we as a state and as a citizenry are confused about what our role should be. And now that I have broken it down into 4 parameters, healthier, wealthier, wiser, more flexible, more adaptable, let me go through each one of those parameters and show you how, rather than helping the Indian state go towards Viksit Bharat, The state is actually going in the reverse direction as far as these 4 parameters are concerned. Let me start with creating a more flexible, more adaptive workforce. Did you know, for example, that 44% of our active labor force or workforce is involved in agriculture, which is a sector that contributes only 13.5 to 14% to our GDP. 44%. In the West, it's not more than 2% of the workforce that is involved in agriculture. Even in middle income economies that are vying to become developed, it's not more than 3.5%. But in India, 44%, that's almost 300 million Indians who are able-bodied and able to work and contribute to our workforce are involved in this sector, which from production to purchase is almost medieval. And this is the problem, that we, rather than identifying this as the biggest lacuna that will go against our becoming Viksit Bharat, we are decade upon decade, year upon year, almost month upon month, are encouraging it, are contributing to this. Let me give you a few data points. We have to remember that agriculture as a sector has to be divided into what we are producing and where we are producing. Let me first concentrate on where we are producing what we are producing to illustrate to you what the calamitous situation that we have. 70 million hectares of Indian agricultural land. That's almost 40% of all available Indian agricultural land. 70 million hectares has been severely damaged because of floods or droughts in the last 6 years. This is the situation of the agricultural sector. 81% of farmers and crop is not insured. 81%. 40% of all our agriculture is directly dependent upon the monsoon. 40%. 110,000 farmers have committed suicide in the last 10 years. 110,000. It's terrible for me to say this, but in any other sector, do you find these many people, so many people working, committing suicide? I know it's, as I said, it's awful, but if in the IT sector there is one suicide, the news runs for a week. You go into the intricate details of why that person who was a technologist committed suicide, what were the reasons. Out here, 110,000 farmers have committed suicide and we don't even blink an eye. This is the situation right now. And as far as what we produce, where we produce, let me give you another example. India is the world's second largest producer of sugarcane. Every year we produce 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane. Now, sugarcane is a very strange crop. It's extremely water intensive. It's a water guzzler. It requires only 9% of arable land, but almost 77% of the irrigable water. In fact, the amount of water required to produce 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane is 1 quadrillion liters. I didn't even know the word quadrillion existed. I thought things finished after a trillion. So let me put this in perspective. That's the amount of water that is present in 10 Ganga Sagar dams. That's drinking water. That's the amount of water that is required to grow 500 billion kilograms of sugarcane. And sugar prices, they have reduced by half in the last 7 years. And yet, every political party, every politician, rather than stop growing sugarcane, is incentivizing farmers to grow more and more sugarcane. You have the increase every year of the MSP equivalent of sugarcane. Politicians are proud to proclaim it in their manifestos. One politician stood up against it and said, we can no longer afford to grow sugarcane. Incidentally, that politician has once again become the chief minister. I talk of Devendra Fadnavis. But when he was the CM first time round, he said, from now on, anybody wants to grow sugarcane would have to take government permission from it. And that was a masterstroke, because we know in this country, if you don't want anything to be done, take government permission for it. But in 3 months, he had to renege on his order. 3 months, he took this order back. And I won't name the politician that forced him to do it. India has honored him with India's second highest honor award, Padma Vibhushan. But that politician runs liquor industry in Maharashtra. And molasses, which is a byproduct of sugarcane industry, is important for that. This is how the state is thinking about its role. We are not worried about what will happen to the sugar prices. We are not worried about using 1 quadrillion liters of water. Do you know what our water table capacity is? It has shrunk by almost half. The water availability per capita has reduced from 2,800 meters cube to 1,450 meters cube. In fact, United Nations identifies 1,700 cubic meters as water required per capita for civilized living. So we are officially uncivilized right now. Every year, 78% of Indian river monsoon water goes waste into the ocean. 3,200 billion cubic feet of Godavari river water goes waste into the ocean every year. And what is the water requirement for the entire state of Tamil Nadu? 1,800 billion cubic feet. How much goes waste? 3,200 billion cubic feet. And what are the politicians doing? They are cutting ribbons, flagging off water trains. If you remember, 4 years ago, there was a massive famine or drought in Latur, and politicians were flagging off water trains to go to Latur. Instead of doing that, we should be linking rivers. 30 rivers should be linked so that 30 million hectares of Indian agricultural land can be irrigated. In fact, in the last 20 years, 5 Supreme Court benches have sat together and they've implored the government to start linking rivers. 5 governments since 1995 have elaborated on this policy that we need to link rivers. That's the only way to get floods connected with droughts and remove this problem that we have of floods on one side and droughts on the other. And what was the situation? It was only 6 months ago that the first river linking project was inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi. What has the state been doing? It's not that the state's been living idle. We have the Grand Narmada project, and right now, one of the most successful projects India has ever undertaken. You have the Narmada project that is right now providing 33 million homes with tap water. 2.5 million hectares of land across 5 states is being irrigated. 1.2 million homes have been provided electricity, except there is one problem. The foundation stone for Narmada was laid by Jawaharlal Nehru. It was inaugurated by Narendra Modi. One project has taken more than 50 years to implement. And here we are talking of making a Viksit Bharat. Let us now talk about what we produce. Well, as far as rice is concerned, India produces 50% less per hectare, 4,500 kilograms per hectare of rice, which is 50% less than what any typical rice producing country produces like Vietnam or Thailand. And when it comes to maize, it is 25% of our optimum capacity. We simply are archaic, almost medieval in our production of the agricultural produce. And of what we produce, every year, 70 million tons of Indian food grain goes waste. 30% of all fruits and vegetables that India produces every year goes waste. What is our storage capacity? 145 million tons of food grain. And how much do we produce? 320 million tons of food grains. We cannot store almost half of the food grains that we produce. I'll come to that a bit later about the calamitous situation. But this is what we are producing. And of what we are producing, it is laced with poison. India is the world's second largest consumer of chemical pesticide. Every year, we consume 60,000 tons of chemical pesticide. Every year, 30,000 Indians die of pesticide poisoning. And it's not just deaths related to pesticide poisoning. You've heard of those cancer trains that run from Punjab to Rajasthan 3 a day. Everything is laced with poison. If it's not air, if not water, it is land. What are we doing about it? Precious nothing. India has the world's largest food export refusal rate, 7 times more than China. Foreign countries don't want to buy what we produce. In fact, forget about foreign countries. Even states don't want to buy. Forget about states. Even states that are normal allies with each other politically don't want to buy each other's food. Recently, Karnataka refused rice from Punjab, and both are political allies. They said, sorry, it's laced with poison. This is the situation of what we produce and where we produce. And 3 reforms would have changed all that. And one man decided, I will bring in India's greatest reforms ever. And that man was Narendra Modi. And he brought in those 3 farm laws. And what happened? The greatest day since independence when those farm laws were brought in, and a year later, India's darkest day when those very 3 farm laws were repealed. And the tragedy was that each of those 3 farm laws were almost verbatim in the election manifestos of each of the opposition parties that then took a U-turn. Each one of those, verbatim. What were they? The first one was that the farmers would now have a choice to sell their produce not at government marketplaces, which was APMCs, but at private marketplaces. That is what the bedrock of economic progress is. That is what economics tells you. How would you feel if you, as the producer of a great product, were told suddenly by the government, I'm sorry, you cannot sell your amazing product on Amazon, but you have to sell it on a government website that runs only 10 minutes in 24 hours. You would sue the pants of the government. But we decided for the farmers what was good for them, even though only 6% of the produce is ever sold on APMCs. And yet we denied. What was the second? Second was this bureaucratic speak was to do away with the emergency provisions of the Essential Commodities Act. Now, this is one of those things that is a remnant of a Soviet era when one word that a bureaucrat comes up with can change the entire definition and change or destroy the life of anyone, which is storage was converted to hoarding. And almost immediately overnight, the farmer or the businessman would be liable for a non-bailable arrest. As a result, no businesswoman or no businessman worth his or her salt was prepared to make these state-of-the-art godowns that could store the perishable produce. And you've seen how farmers habitually, destroy their crops or load on or offload all their thousands of tons of onions and tomatoes and whatnot onto the streets. Even now, in fact, they've started pouring milk onto the streets because you simply cannot store enough. That was the second, to do away with the emergency provision so the state doesn't have the right to declare what was being stored as being hoarded. And what was the third one? Was to allow any company to approach a farmer and to say, why are you producing loss-making crops? I will give you this money. You have the tools, you have the land, you grow this crop for me. Contract farming. And the irony was that the Congress, erstwhile Congress ruled state in Punjab, had not just okayed contract farming, they had built a law and act. It was already in place. Captain Amrinder Singh was giving thousands of crores to the same quote-unquote corrupt Adani and Ambani to actually have the contract farming. And the moment you had Modi bring in these 3 laws, all hell broke loose. The nation came to a standstill. The capital of logjam. You had siege being laid onto Delhi. 5 highways were blocked. The nation suffered an economic loss of 3,500 crores every single day for the entire year. This is the role of the state. But on some level, I don't mind the politicians reneging on it, because what Prime Minister Modi did a year later, he went back on his word. The 3 farm laws were repealed. And the opposition was all very happy and said, look, we told you, we won, even though they wanted those very farm reforms. I don't blame Modi, because politicians are born to be hypocrites. In fact, if you were to take a blood sample, you would find more than cholesterol hypocrisies running in the veins of. They have to win elections. So they'll say they have rationalized every failure of theirs. What got my goat was not the politicians, was in fact one other most important sacrosanct element of our democracy, which was the judiciary. And the day was even darker than when the farm laws were repealed, was the day when the Supreme Court asked, the bench asked with the Chief Justice, I think Bodbe was his name at that point of time, he said, all we see are the people, 2.5 odd million people, farmers who are against the farm laws. Where are the people who are for the farm laws? This is what the Supreme Court asked. Nothing could be worse than that question. Because in a sense, the Supreme Court was saying that those 300 million farmers who are doing what they should be doing all day round, all year round, growing the crops in the far-flung areas of Telangana, growing rice or growing wheat, or in Tamil Nadu or in Odisha, drop whatever they are doing, hop onto the next bullock cart or train or a bus and arrive at Tilak Marg outside Supreme Court and say, yes, my lord, we are for the farm laws. Is that how democracy works? No. That is how anarchy works. People who are good at doing what they are doing should be allowed left to do what they do good, not to come onto the streets to demand what should be theirs. And the irony is, a week later, after Supreme Court stayed those farm laws, the very committee that was constituted by Supreme Court to look into the farm laws said 81% of farmers and farm lobbies were for farm laws. But by that time, it was too late. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the confused role that the state played. It could have ushered in the greatest reforms independent India had seen. Yes, there have been bankruptcy laws, there have been other reforms, there have been R&D reforms that have affected 5 to 10 million Indians. Here were reforms that were directly affecting 300 million people and indirectly affecting 82% of all Indian households. And the state went back on it. Is this how you would induce flexibility and adaptability of 300 million people, 44% of our workforce? No. Let me give you another example. One city, Paris. One city attracts 25 million foreign tourists a year. And one country, India, of 1400 million people, attracts 11.5 million. Paris, 25 million. Whole of India, 11.5 million. Tourism as a sector directly contributes only 2.5 to 3% to our GDP. It should be 5 times that. Tourism as a sector employs only 30 million Indians. It should be 5 times that. We have an 8,000-year-old culture. We have amazing vistas, panoramas. We have deserts. We have oceans. We have beaches. We have greenery. We have everything you could think of. We have hundreds of languages, hundreds of cuisines, dialects. We have 42 World Heritage Sites. Greece has half of those. And yet a tiny country like Greece attracts 3 times as many foreign tourists as we do. Is this the role of the state? You have the Sun Temple at Peru attracting 1.5 million tourists a year. The Sun Temple at Konark, 9,000. A tiny country like UAE has more hotel rooms than India, 10 million population. China has 200 times more hotel rooms than India does. What are we doing wrong? It's the fact that Bodh Gaya should be the Vatican of the East. That is the city where Lord Buddha attained nirvana, enlightenment. And yet we have, while 535 million number of Buddhists around the world, we have the annual budget of the municipal corporation of Bodh Gaya less than the production budget of the failed movie Adipurush, 500 crores. Bodhi tree under which Lord Buddha sat and attained enlightenment is the most sacrosanct place for 535 million Buddhists, and yet only 0.25 million visited the Bodhi tree. This is the lowest hanging fruit, tourism. What is the state doing? And it's not that the state didn't think of it. People realize that, look, we have a problem out here. There is a 60% gap between the supply and demand as far as labor for tourism sector is concerned. 60% gap. So in 2014-15, the Prime Minister sat together with his policy makers and came up with Skill India mission. You need to skill people in order for them to be gainfully employed in these sectors. And the idea was by 2022, we would skill 400 million Indians. Well, 2022 came and went. How many did we manage to skill? 14 million. Target was 400 million. We skilled 14 million. And it's not that people don't understand that, yes, behind skilling is also apprenticeship. Because there are people who are experts who have to then go forward and skill Guru Shishya thing. And India has had an apprenticeship act going back to Nehruvian days, 1962. But we have an active labor force of 600 million. How many apprentices do we have? 0.5 million. What is the state doing? I'll tell you what the state is doing. The state is running 495 hotels, and all of them are loss making. And the only time they make money is when they have to ferry politicians from one part to the other to the hotel for resort to keep them away from joining another party. Luckily, it hasn't happened in Bihar, but you never know. Is this what the role should of the state has to be? Tourism is the lowest hanging fruit, but instead of plucking it, we are watching it rot right in front of our eyes. Is this how we will attain flexibility and adaptability in the Indian workforce? Let me quickly come to the other aspect of it, because this much is also true. You have to have a wiser workforce. Of course, you have more educated workforce, the faster you will attain the so-called Viksit Bharat. Where does India fare in there? Well, you have a teacher vacancy of 19%. There is a teacher shortfall of 1.1 million in India right now. 8% of all Indian schools are single teacher schools. There is a dropout of 20% of Indian schools teachers, Indian schools students once they reach high school. You have a situation where 40% of all rural schools do not have a functional toilet. No wonder the parents don't want to send their children off to these schools that have no toilet. You have a teacher absenteeism ratio of 25%. 45% of all Indian high school students cannot do a simple class 3 sum. 52% of all Indian high school students cannot string together a sentence in English. This is the reality. Does it become better when we talk of student-teacher ratio? In some states like Bihar, you have a student-pupil-teacher ratio of 60:1. How about universities? Because these tens of hundreds of millions of students have to progress towards university. How does India fare when it comes to creating a wiser workforce? We have only 1,200 universities. None of them rank in the top 200 universities of any acceptable metrics. Indian government itself has had to shut down 800 of these universities and colleges because it said they are not viable universities at all. They are not using their function of imparting knowledge as far as it comes to beyond school. You have a gross enrollment ratio of only 25% when it comes to joining universities. 53% of all Indian university graduates are unemployable. Let me repeat that, not unemployed, but unemployable. They don't have the necessary skills to be employed. 82% of all Indian engineers are unemployable. You have to realize at some point that we missed the bus. Now, I'm a student, I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. And I remember at that point of time, none of us thought that all Indians will have access to telephony. Because at that point of time, hardly 1 million Indians had landline access, and you had to wait for a year. Many of you would remember, to get a phone, and that phone would arrive almost like a scooter arriving in a family. There would be some function and a tilak on that Bakelite phone, the rotary phone. And there was 700 million population, 1 million landlines, and we thought, how on earth would every Indian have access to telephone? But then more than technology came technology that leapfrogged this. And right now, because of mobile telephony technology, there are more phones than there are Indians. And we should have realized this. Sometimes more than technology, you have an avenue that is open for a leapfrogging technology, and COVID showed us this. We simply cannot afford to make more and more brick and mortar schools and colleges and universities because the demand is just too much. We cannot supply this. E-learning was the way to go. India should have been a forerunner in e-learning. That is what COVID taught us, but unfortunately, we missed that bus out there. That is where the wiser workforce is concerned. Let me come to the third aspect of it, of course, and this is one of the most important ones, of a wealthier workforce. The more prosperous the workforce is, of course, the more prosperous the nation would be, the faster it would achieve its targets. Now, admittedly, one of the things that endeared me to our Prime Minister, just one of many, was what he said in 2013. It was remarkable for a politician to say it. And he said, the government has no business to be in business. And I said, finally, there is one politician who realizes this. A government has no business to be in business. And the Prime Minister repeated this in 2017, in 2019, and in 2021. I thought, yes, this is the truth. But unfortunately, in the last 11 years, all what the Modi government has done is to be in the business of running businesses. We have 1,830 public sector units, more than when we started 2014. 400 of them are non-functional. I hope you understand what non-functionality means. They are not producing what they should be producing, and yet leaching tens of thousands of crores of our money, taxpayers' money. Every year, 21% of our annual allocation budget that Ms. Sitaraman dishes out every year goes in propping up these public sector units. That 9.5 lakh crores or 45 lakh crores or whatever is there to spend. And there has been zero privatization other than Air India, for which from atheist I have turned into believer that God has to exist for Air India to have been privatized. 70,000 crore debt, finally. But other than that, there's been zero privatization. All this government is doing is running businesses that it should not be, making grinders, televisions, scooters, thankfully not watches anymore, but HMT was made dysfunctional recently. What is it doing? Why is it running public sector banks? In the last 10 years, the PSU banks have run an NPA of more than 10.5 lakh crores. And yes, there is a sleight of hand because the government says NPAs have been written off, not waived off, written off. But the fact is, of what has been written off, only 1.5 lakh crores has been obtained. 90% of what the banks owe us, the taxpayers, is gone. Maybe it will never be recovered. But that's not the point. The point is, when the head of the country says the government has no business to be running businesses, why are we running loss-making businesses? Is that how we will progress? And it's not a question of just PSU banks. It's a question of 87,000 crores that has been lost by them to 32,000 instances of fraud. And when did this whole scenario come into being that we need public sector banks? You remember 1969, yes, man landed on the moon, but a few weeks after that, a more catastrophic event took place where Indira Gandhi nationalized 14 banks. One person stood up against this, Mr. Cooper. He was the co-founder of Swatantra Party. He went to the Supreme Court. He said, this is illegal. What about my private rights and private enterprise? Supreme Court agreed with it. Supreme Court overturned Indira Gandhi's judgment, or quote-unquote judgment decision to nationalize the banks. What did Indira Gandhi do? She overturned the Supreme Court judgment. And it's been 50 years, and the public sector banks have been used as a cash cow, as a kamdhenu for the politicians. It's a tap on, tap off. You want to give loan to a friend, you dial up the thing. It was so calamitous that in the 70s, during the emergency, Sanjay Gandhi used to dictate who is to get loans from the public sector banks. Don't think the situation has changed for the better. Our heroes are not scientists. Our heroes are Harshad Mehta and the likes. That's the situation. But what's the government doing? Running all these businesses. Why is the government infusing 3 lakh crores almost every year to telephony company like MTNL? When we have private companies, Vodafone, when we have Airtel, when we have Jio, reaching to the most far-flung corners, giving data that is 100th the fraction or cost of what it was 10 years ago. Why do we need government-run companies? That is the situation, the confused role of the state. And if you think this is the situation as far as PSUs are concerned, maybe the situation as far as private enterprise is concerned is better. Well, let me give you a glimpse of what is happening. An MSME that on average employs 150 people spends upwards of 18 lakh rupees every year in just filing compliances. Many of you are private business owners. 18 lakh rupees every year. India has 69,000 compliances. 25,000 of them are state compliances. This is the situation. In fact, I've calculated for you, done the job for you. That's every working day, one compliance to be done every hour. So by the time this talk finishes, many of you businessmen would have missed that compliance and are liable to be arrested. The top 5 GDP contributors states, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, they have 1,000 laws that carry imprisonment clauses for people doing businesses. We are still governed by 1948 Factories Act, where if, believe it or not, in your factory you don't have a spittoon, you are liable to be arrested. It is the truth. Gautam Chikarmani and another have written a book on this, Jailed for Doing Business. Please go and read it. This is the situation as far as a wealthier workforce is concerned. And finally, as they say, as the adage goes, health is wealth. If you don't have a healthier workforce, you don't have a workforce. Now, admittedly, as I said, India has made giant strides in the area of health. Note, I gave you a few parameters about IMR, about so many other things. But the thing with health is, you're not looking at the present. When you're looking at India to become developed in 1947, you're looking at the future. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what would be the nation's health be? Are we prepared for that? Now, in 2020, Indian Council of Medical Research brought out a couple of pie charts. They were very revealing. They wanted to find out the kind of diseases that afflict Indians presently and the kind of diseases that afflicted Indians before the economic liberalization in 1990. Very revealing. And what they found out was that in 1990, 70% of the diseases, roughly 70% of the diseases that afflicted Indians were communicable diseases. Tuberculosis, malaria, viral diseases, you had cholera, and that's logical because we were a poor country then, and we lived in stifling conditions, the air was polluted, the water was contaminated, so 70% of us were afflicted with communicable diseases. And only 30% had non-communicable diseases like heart ailments, cancer, diabetes, asthma. And right now, 30 years after economic liberalization, after prosperity, that wealth that was brought by economic liberalization, the pie charts have totally flipped. Today, 70% of the diseases that afflict us are non-communicable diseases. And only 30% are communicable, and they are going down even further. You have, for example, 1.7 million Indians who died of tuberculosis 30 years ago. A quarter of them succumbed today. You had 15 million cases of malaria 30 years ago. Right now, you have less than 3 million. And of course, it's going down even further. But talking of non-communicable diseases, it's like a tsunami that has come, and we don't even understand. With growing wealth, growing prosperity, India is the hub of world cancer cases under 50. There's been more than 100% jump in them. India is the world hub for under 50 heart attacks. India is the world hub for asthma. We have 315 million Indians having BP problem. 250 million Indians are clinically obese. This is what prosperity has got us. You remember in 60s and 70s in the West, if kids wouldn't eat, their mother would say, please eat up. There is a child dying hungry in India. Right now, 250 million Indians are clinically obese. 150 million Indians are pre-diabetic. 100 million of us are confirmed diabetic. It's not just that the tsunami has come, it has gone past us. We haven't even realized in our race to become more and more prosperous what we've done to our nation's health. And what is the state doing? Do we have a $1 billion, $1 trillion anti-diabetes drug, monoclonal antibody, anti-heart ailment drug, anti-cancer drug? And here I want a show of hands because this is important. How many of you know who Lakshmi Kutti is? Please raise your hand, especially the youngsters. Right, only one. Now, 6 months ago, I was Okay, and you're the one who just heard my podcast where I talked about the same thing, so that's negated. But 6 months ago, I was in the same boat. Even I didn't know. Let me tell you who Lakshmi Kutti is. Lakshmi Kutti is an 85-year-old frail woman who's lived all her life in the Western Ghat forests. And for 50 years, she's been collecting these medicinal herbs. And she has a cornucopia of 500 medicinal plants that she uses to treat tribals and jungle dwellers. And our country respected that, awarded her with Padma Shri 4 years ago. And she came to Delhi and she was awestruck by all that opulence of Rashtrapati Bhavan and everything. She said, this is not for me, I want to return to my jungle. Instead of giving her a Padma, we should have had 100 Lakshmi Kutti institutes of natural products. We should have found out what is the active ingredient of each one of our medicinal plants. Maybe one of those would be multi-billion, multi-trillion-dollar anti-diabetes drug, anti-cancer drug, anti-asthma drug, anti-heart ailment drug. And if you think this is a figment of my imagination, let me take another show of hands. How many of you know who 2UU is? 2UU. One hand has gone up. Again, I was in the same boat. Let me tell you who 2UU is. Just like Lakshmi Kutti, 2UU is also 85-year-old, of course, Chinese woman. Just like Lakshmi Kutti, she's dwelled all her life in forests of China. Just like Lakshmi Kutti, she's got a collection of 500 odd medicinal plants. But unlike Lakshmi Kutti, 2UU extracted the active ingredient of one of her medicinal plants. And that was artemisinin, the only known viable drug against malaria. And for that, 2UU got the Nobel Prize 3 years ago. And you know what's going to happen? Some lab from Nordic countries, Sweden or something, will descend down on the Western Ghats and talk to Lakshmi Kutti and say, can we have your library of natural products? And Lakshmi Kutti, being what she is, she would say, of course, take it all, kind and affable. And they would go back to Sweden and they would extract the active ingredient. That would be a multi-trillion-dollar anti-diabetes drug. For that, they would get the Nobel Prize. And at the Nobel ceremony, they would thank Lakshmi Kutti and we'll be so proud we will give her a Bharat Ratna. Is that what the role of the state has to be? No. So rather than having a productive, a flexible, a more adaptive workforce, a healthier, wealthier, wiser workforce, the state is doing exactly the opposite. And unless this shroud of confusion lifts, I'm afraid Viksit Bharat is at least a century away. But you know, having cursed and ridiculed and mocked and criticized the state enough, let us not shirk away from the responsibility that we as citizens also have. As I said at the beginning, the confusion shrouds not just the state, but shrouds us as a people. And I want to concentrate the next 10 minutes on that. Now, you know, I am all for a welfare state. If India was not a welfare state, we would have wiped out tens, perhaps hundreds of millions of Indians. Nobody wants that. We want to become prosperous together as a country of 1,400, 1,500 million odd people. Nobody wants an island of prosperity in an ocean of despair. Nobody wants the GDP per capita of $50,000 of a gated community when the rest of India wallows in $2,500 to $3,000 GDP per capita. And welfare is important for that. Welfare saves lives. If Modi had not provided 110 million toilets, do you know that each new toilet made has saved that household upwards of 50,000 rupees in health costs? If Modi had not provided 100 million Ujjwala gas connections, did you know that 150,000 Indian lives are directly being saved because of Ujjwala scheme? Because even I didn't know this. The biggest cause for infant mortality in India is not some disease, not cholera, not diphtheria. It is household pollution. That air through which the mother, pipe through which the mother blows the air to ignite the chula, that is what used to kill the infant. Modi had not provided 120 million tap water connections. Did you know that the diarrheal deaths under 5 have been slashed by half? Welfareism in India is important. It saves life. It makes our workforce what it is. It is crucial for us. Ayushman Bharat, 380 million Ayushman cards provided. Almost 72 million people treated through them. That's more than the population of United Kingdom. And what has it resulted in? You know, the out-of-pocket expenditure that was the fastest descent of an Indian into poverty where the health cost you could not afford, that has been slashed by 27% directly because of Ayushman health cards. So many other, not just the health welfareism. You talk of financial inclusion, you talked about the Jan Dhan scheme, you talk of the Mudra loans. Welfareism is important, and I would say, according to me, independent India's greatest achievement is to have vaccinated 1 billion Indians within 1 year twice over. So welfareism saves lives. India has to be a welfare state, but this is important. Welfareism is only possible in a capitalist economy. Welfareism/socialism is not possible by a socialist state. You need to generate that money in order for you to then spend it. And this is one situation where we believe, as a citizen, the role of the state is something separate. But the role of the citizen is so confused that we forget about thinking about it. It just doesn't register in our brains. If there is one thing that is going to take this country down the bottom of an abyss from which there is no escape, it is us not defining rather the line that separates welfareism from freebism. And we as a state are never going to do it. No politician will ever say that what he's doling out is freebie. He will say this is welfareism. We have to define, we have to draw that line, and admittedly, it is a very difficult line to draw. What is welfareism? What is freebism? And unless we draw it, I'm afraid, forget about 2047, even 2147 looks a distant dream. Because the fact of the matter is, we have a situation where we as citizenry are so involved in becoming healthier, wealthier, wiser, more adaptable, that we've forgotten that all this money that we are generating, somebody is using it for some other purpose than what it was intended for. What is freebism? What is welfareism? And let me out here take a show of hands to illustrate the problem. At the risk of sounding patronizing, please forgive me. But how many of you here, please raise your hands, love your families? Please raise your hands. Thank you, of course, all of you. Thank you so much. How many of you have their families in debt? Okay, just a couple of hands have gone up. So all of you love your families, and 99% of your families are not in debt. Let me take, at the risk of another patronizing question, how many of you in this audience love India? Please raise your hands. Almost all the hands. You're not a communist by any chance, sir. You're not raised. You're not from JNU, are you? Just joking. So all of you love your families. Almost none of your families are in debt. All of you love India. Then how the hell are you and me able to sleep at night knowing that India is under a debt of 260 lakh crores? How? How are we able to sleep at night knowing that the cumulative state debt is now upwards of 110 lakh crores? हमें नींद कैसे आ रही है? And you know, when many of you applauded when I said 10 years ago we had 350 startups and now we have 125,000 startups, those are the first people on which the axe will fall. The corporate tax. There is no such thing as free lunch. We are not America that has a debt of $38 trillion. They don't give a damn. It could be $60 trillion. They'll just print more helicopter chopper money. We do not have that luxury. Somebody has to pay for it. And that moment will come sooner than you think. That moment came in 1990. When right now, if our foreign exchange reserves were $705 billion, at that point they dwindled down to $3 billion. We mortgaged 67 tons of our gold. It was loaded onto ships about to dock in England to be given to Bank of England. Do we want that situation again? If we don't, we have to define that line. Now, as I said, it's very difficult to define that line. What is freebism? What is welfareism? Many people say, what is welfareism is freebism, what is freebism, welfareism. I myself have defined that line. To each his own. But I'll tell you what I believe is freebism. Welfareism is You're using our money for the welfare of the country. It is pro-national. Freebism is you're using our money against the country, for placating your vote bank, for appeasing, for winning an election. It is anti-national. Welfarism is pro-national, freebism is anti-national. Let me give you a few examples. Every political party promises that if elected to power, they will fund free pilgrimage to senior citizens. Why? It's our money. Arvind Kejriwal, when he was the chief minister of my state, Delhi, his Atma still travels around wherever a Delhi ad. He might still be here, somebody. I don't know. हमारे साथ ही लटक के जाते हैं. He promised every senior citizen a free trip to Dwarka. Why? It's our money. Samajwadi Party, free trip to Ajmer Sharif. Congress Party, free trip to Madurai. Biju Janata Dal, free trip to Odisha, that Jagannath Puri. And no political party is immune. BJP in Nagaland, they promised every senior citizen, if elected, free trip to Jerusalem. वो क्या है? अयोध्या तो लेके नहीं गए, जेरूसलम कहाँ है पता लगा लें. What are they doing? It's our money. They're placating their vote bank. They want to win election. It is anti-national. It is for them. It is for their party. It's not for the country. That is the reason why we have Hajj subsidies. We have monthly salaries to imams. We have loan-free, giving loan-free to people, free loans to people to set up shops on Waqf land. We have iftar, so many other things. This is what freebism is. Let me give you another example. In the last 10 years, upwards of 10,000 crores, 8,500 crores has been used by the BJP for government ads, central government. Why? Why are they burning our money for wishing each other happy birthday on these center spreads that you see every morning? And we as citizens don't even look at it. We don't even read those ads. They're wishing each other happy birthday or some Jayanti, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi Jayanti. All those Jayantis are... Took about 2 seconds, but you're a sharp one. Why are you doing this? Scratching each other's back at the expense of our money. And during the time when Aam Aadmi Party was ruling Delhi, in 3 years, they spent 1,200 crores. In fact, the High Court castigated them. One patient died because CAT scan was not available in a hospital. Only 6 CAT scan machines were available in Delhi state-run government hospitals. And they were using 1,200 crores on government ads. And it's not just the ads that they're using to scratch each other's back. The damage that it does to the democracy is not that evident, because what they're doing is they're bribing the third arm of our democracy, which is the media. Because the moment you publish something that they don't like, they turn off the tap. And they direct you to publish what they want. This is direct bribing, and this is freebism if ever there was. In 2005, celebrated economists, of course they were, Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia and the late Dr. Manmohan Singh said, we cannot live like this, we cannot survive. India will go bankrupt if we keep on doling the pensions like the way we are. So they devised a new scheme, because they said in 1980, 2% of our revenue went in giving pensions, and in 2005, it had jumped to 20%, 10 times that. So they came up with the new pension system, or NPS, whereby you would have a contribution of the government 10% or 14% it was, and the employee as well, as opposed to what is now called the OPS, or the old pension scheme, where 50% of the last salary was given and also tax-free. And soon every state reverted or went to new PS, NPS. In 2022, another celebrated economist, Rahul Gandhi. Of course he is. अभी उन्होंने सेंचुरी मारी है 100 इलेक्शन वो मीम जाता ना जीरो चेक कर लो सर but in 2022 he went to Himachal and he said, if you elect me to power or Congress to power, I will junk the scheme that we ourselves brought, NPS. I'll revert to OPS. And Himachal had 1.3 lakh government employees, 1.6 lakh pensioners. Congress won. And as a result, 77% of Himachal's tax revenue right now is going in propping of the OPS. And when we associate Revadi or Freebie with Narendra Modi, he did not come up with this phrase. It was the Congress's Montague Singh Ahluwalia who got up and warned the Congress, don't do this, you will go bankrupt. It was Raghuram Rajan who warned, don't. The RBI governor said, you are going to spend 5 times more on OPS than you were on NPS, don't do it, you will go bankrupt. Nobody heard, except when 6 months ago, the Chief Minister of Himachal got up on the assembly and said, we actually are bankrupt. We don't have money to pay salaries. They were about to tax if a family had a second toilet. Although thankfully, second magge ko nahi. They have mortgaged Himachal Bhavan in Delhi. This is what freebie is. This is what the situation is right now. And when Rahul Gandhi said, khatakat, 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 I'll give 1 lakh to every eligible woman, BJP rightly mocked it and said, yes, of course, this is ridiculous. You are going to go bankrupt. This is the freebie of all freebies. 20 lakh crores is going to be spent. But then came Maharashtra elections. And BJP promised exactly that. In fact, they didn't just promise it. They delivered 1,500 rupees per month to every eligible Maharashtrian woman aged 21 to 60, costing the exchequer 50,000 crores. And the then incumbent chief minister said, if we elect us to power, we will double it to 3,000 rupees. People remember Arvind Kejriwal as the greatest freebie donor, but they don't even register that Maharashtra right now has a debt of 8 lakh crores. Somebody has to pay for this. When Rahul Gandhi said, we want an MSP guarantee on all agricultural produce, BJP rightly mocked it. Said, what are you talking about? If the government were to procure and give an MSP guarantee, it would be costing us 16 to 20 lakh crores every year. As it is, we have only 45 lakh crores to dole. उसमें से 20 लाख 16 लाख करोड़ इस पे चला जाएगा, बचेगा क्या? Rightly so. But then came Haryana election. And BJP promised every Haryana farmer MSP guarantee on every agricultural produce. And what happened? BJP won. This is what is going on right now. And unless we as citizens realize welfareism is good, but what is happening right now is freebism, I'm afraid we are doling down the abyss. And because I mentioned it, let me end by talking about the mother of all freebies, the MSP, the minimum support price. Now, this is a relic of the Soviet Union era when we were actually having perhaps a need for it. The farmers were so poor. Indian agricultural sector was in a doldrum. We were producing only 80 million tons. Right now, we are producing 4 times that, 320 million tons. But the fact of the matter is, while our buffer capacity mandated by the parliament to have a maximum limit to have only 40 million tons, 2 years ago, we had 100 million tons because no politician has the guts to refuse procuring. Every year we spend 3 lakh crores in procuring the grains that we cannot use. When COVID struck, we could not distribute 8 million tons of food grains because bureaucratic speak again, it was unedible. Rats were eating it. This is what the situation is. And farmers don't want it. Farmers realized that faulty agricultural produce price framing, they have lost in the last 15 years upwards of 45 lakh crores. Nobody wants this. The governor says this is the biggest reason for inflation. Don't do it. You have an FCI, Food Corporation of India, that anyway cannot store enough under a debt of 3 lakh crores. Government says no issues. Write off that debt straight away. Every year MSP is increasing. Governments keep on procuring food that they cannot need. We do not need. And I'm not even talking about the damage it is doing to our water table, about the pesticide use, about growing millions of tons that nobody needs, we cannot store. But if you think, and we have been thinking this, MSP to kisano ka hai, hame kya farak padega? Our socio-economic strata, think again. I'll just end in 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I'm taking more time. Oh, okay, sorry. I beg your pardon. You see, with MSP is almost like a sarkari naukri. It's a government job that, yes, we will procure, come what may, we will give you this money. The farmers, pure economics, If you guarantee that you're going to procure something, the farmers will keep on making that, producing that. So as a result, the farmers of Punjab and Haryana and now increasingly of Uttar Pradesh started growing more and more of rice, which is a water guzzling crop. And as a result, the water table of Punjab and Haryana went down alarmingly. And for once, the politicians were alarmed and they brought in an act. And they said rice can be sowed only at the onset of monsoon so that we don't need a lot of water. But because that happened, the rice harvesting also got a bit delayed. And now it coincides with the onset of winter, which is right now. And I'm coming from Delhi. And you don't understand how lucky you guys are. Because AQI right now of Delhi, in fact, last year, I'm talking about last year, reached 999. The acceptable limit is 30 to 50. 999 भी तब पहुंचा हो सकता है मीटर में सिर्फ 3 रीडिंग्स हो सकता है 5000 हो. Why? Because, and let me give you the perspective out here, every year 35 million tons of rice stubble is burnt in Punjab, Haryana, and now increasingly in Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh. It doesn't register much. It would register much even if I were to tell you that every year burning of rice stubble produces 149 million tons of carbon dioxide. The entire Indian transport produces 250 million tons of carbon dioxide every year. Rice stubble alone is 150 million tons. It still won't register until I give you the perspective that every year approximately 70,000 farms are on fire. Still it doesn't register. Let me give you another perspective. 17,900 square kilometers of farmland is on fire every day for a month right next to Delhi. And you think it won't affect you in this socio-economic strata? It won't affect the people living in Lutyens, Delhi, the Prime Minister, President, the judges, because this is a thing that the farmers do. We are spending right now 150 times more on curing the respiratory diseases because of stubble burning than we were had we bought in just the happy seeder machines that would take out the rice stubble in an eco-friendly way. The cost for that, $70 million. And the ad budget of Punjab, Haryana, and the central government in the last 3 years, $1,300 million. That is why I say we were a banana republic ever since we became a republic. But then, ladies and gentlemen, हमें तो banana republic से republic बनाना है. If we ourselves don't understand the confused role that the state has, that we as citizens have, how are we going to reach this 2047 panacea of Viksit Bharat? Thank you so much.
I think by the sense of the amount of time the claps went on, you can only see that how much all of them have enjoyed. Otherwise, at a time I teach at a university, sir, we say that beyond 5 minutes and the fifth bench, everything is a distance education. I mean, then to hold an audience to this sensational talk, I think is exceptional. So you may please take your seat. We'll have I have a lot of questions. I'm afraid if I'll be able to finish them, we'll take about 10 minutes. What I'll do is a mix of 2-3 questions from ones that I have, and then maybe a couple I'll come to you. The first question comes from Vivek Shroff. He says that, so what are your views on judiciary? Of course, you've talked enough on agriculture, tourism, and so much more. But what do you think about judiciary and how far we need to travel?
Yes, there already has been a contempt of case against it. But because I was fortunate enough to be represented by JSI Deepak, and he helped me, I can say it without any fear that if there is one aspect of democracy that needs to be changed even more than legislature and executive, it is the judiciary.
Wow.
It is a shame in this country that the my lords who wax eloquent about every other thing refuse to look within their own. It is a shame that in this country you have more than the population of South Korea, 53 million cases that are pending. It's a crime that is happening. And at the rate at which the judiciary is disposing of these cases, it would take 323 years to clear the backlog. I hope one of those medicinal plants of Lakshmi Kutti will give us that drug that will make us live that long. What is going on? We have only 20 judges per million Indian population. America has 150. As it is, the population of judges is so low, and at the same time, 30%, 32% of all High Court judges' positions are lying vacant right now. 20% of all Indian judicial positions are lying vacant. Talk of nepotism, talk of collegium system, judges refuse to elect themselves democratically. There is a High Court in India, Punjab and Haryana High Court, where 32% of everyone working there is related to each other. Lawyers, judges, tempers, every clerks. Kya chal raha hai yahan pe? The Supreme Court judges, ex-judges themselves have said there is rampant corruption in the higher judiciary. They, of course, passed it on in a sealed envelope that has never been opened. There are memes that are going around. There was a judge, I think Verma, who was recently, you all heard that, sacks of cash was found, and the meme is going, he is looking straight in his photograph, and he says, "Aise kya dekh raha hai? Dame to FIR karke dikha." It has become a joke. 71% of all Indian prisoners are under trials. They've been denied bail. 115,000 cases are more than 35 years old. 2.5 lakh cases are rape and POXO cases still pending. I mean, it's not just that the wheels of justice are grinding slowly. They've come to a halt. What is the government doing? That's why I'm saying, I'm sorry, don't start. I apologize. I thought my cup of sorrows had run over, but somebody encouraged me.
But yeah, thank you so much. So, of course, judiciary is another challenge. So, there's one practical question. Someone seems to be in the tourism industry.
Yeah.
They said that, of course, we need to capitalize on this low-hanging fruit, as you've identified. But what can we do as individuals, as citizens, as society, assuming that state is not considering it as a priority?
Yeah.
Anything that citizens, young people can do enough for promoting the idea of Incredible India?
No. And I'll tell you why, because this is I'm not accusing you at all. We are all in the same boat, every one of us. But this is the favorite excuse of the politicians. खुद कुछ काम करते नहीं है, blame हम पे डाल देते हैं. It is their job. I am not a votary for the change coming from bottom up. Your job was to elect a government that promised you to deliver what it promised. If it doesn't deliver, it's not your fault. You should continue to do what you're great at. Your job is not to come onto the streets. Only communists and people from JNU do that. People who are wealth creators, they best continue to create wealth. And this is the tragedy. The politicians blame everything on the people who elect them. Right now, one of the biggest canard being spread is because of population, India has a problem. I'm sorry. It's nothing to do with population at all. You look at in the case of GDP, what matters is not the GDP per capita. What matters is not the population, but population density. And if you look at the population density per arable land, India is ranked 7th, behind UK, behind Amsterdam. Are those third world countries? So the failures of the politicians are being thrust upon us, the people, who are electing them. I think that realization has to come.
I agree. So one thing, but just a small derivation from your thing is, one thing we can certainly do is keep voicing our opinions.
Yes.
For the government to understand that this is their job and they need to do. Ayush has read your book, I suspect, and he talks about your book, Hindu Rashtra. And he talks about decline in TFR that you've mentioned, the total fertility rate.
Yes.
A lot of people, including Sanjeev Sanyal and others, have been talking about how India might go into a challenge if we don't stop our family planning programs. What are your opinions on that?
So, right now, I think the national TFR is a little bit above the regeneration 2.1. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken. Is it less than the replacement rate? Okay, yeah. So yes, that is worrisome. But at the same time,
do we run the risk of being a Japan? Just to
not at least for the foreseeable future. The fact is there is unequal distribution of that. If you look at UP, if you look at Bihar, you look at even Bengal, you look at Kashmir, the Kashmir replacement TFR is 1.6, 1.7. So this, again, this is a misnomer that some communities the TFR is high, in some it is low. No, I think on average India is progressing, but at the same time I don't think we've come to a situation where we must start encouraging having 3 or 4 children. No. First, let us cater to the population that we have.
Correct.
I think more than the numbers, it is what are we going to provide those numbers. And I didn't even come, I'm sorry, because of time. The biggest challenge that we're going to face coming forward into the future, very near future, is what is our population going to do in terms of jobs? You already have AI that has technically made all journalists redundant, but that's a good thing. But if you look at so many other areas, now, of course, robotics, it's physical job, it's still, in infancy. But you look at all the jobs that require mental capabilities, AI is going to take over. And I didn't have time to talk about, ideally, I should be jobless in 5 years from now. Because as a scientist, my job is to develop a drug, a vaccine. And AI has already done it. In fact, a month ago, there's a very prestigious journal called Cell came up with a paper, MIT lab and 18 other labs. They took 5 elements, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, hydrogen, something, and they made 41 million compounds. And out of that, 20 were selected, 7 were made, and 4 of them were the most potent antibiotics yet known against MRSA hospital diseases. This is total AI work. This is what scientists have been doing paid for the last 70 years. 2 दिन में AI ने कर दिया. We have to think about that, So more than the population, youngsters, what are they going to do? Everything's been taken over. You talk of legal fields, you talk of tax. Now you need, I would say, AI cannot help in tax evasion as yet. Although people are trying in that area. But at least, in calculating the tax, I think it's AI.
Certainly. Now, I think there's another question on Revdi. I think I'll not ask you because he's already spoken about enough the difference between freebies and public welfare state. And as they said, कि गरीबों की थाली में कहीं ना कहीं तो पुलाव दिख रहा है, लग रहा है कहीं ना कहीं तो चुनाव दिख रहा है. So that pretty much explains what the Revdi culture is all about. This is
now you look at Bihar election, just to give you. Now BJP has been mocking Congress's Khatakat scheme. There's one of 10,000 rupees to every on the eve of the election. If Congress had done it in Telangana, if Congress had done it in Karnataka, what would BJP have said? But the question is, Congress has done it. So Congress had Gauri Lakshmi scheme, Mahalakshmi scheme, all those schemes. Each one of these parties is doing exactly the same. And I come from the land of Tamil Nadu. We pioneered this. हमारा इडली डोसा जयललिता की मिक्सी में ग्राइंड हुआ है.
Wow.
So I should be the last one casting throwing stones on others. But this is the situation.
Such is the life. But I have 3-4 minutes to go.
But excellent idlis are made through Jayalalitha grinders. I have to tell you. Stalin grinders are not very good at all.
And Dr. Ranganathan, while you're on Tamil Nadu and your background, what are your views on reservation?
Yeah, so my views have long been known. Morally and ethically, India should have reservations. We have a moral and ethical reason for it. But at the same time, let us follow the people who advocated for reservations, but targeted and for a limited time span, which was Dr. Ambedkar. And the problem is, when you worship someone, you stop following him. No politician has the guts to follow Ambedkar, who said the reservation should be for limited time of 10 to 20 years and should be targeted. In fact, when the Chief Justice said that the creamy layer of the SCs should be looked at and not given reservation, there was a huge hoo-ha. This is not an issue at all. You know why? Because there is no unequalness of thought between political parties. Nobody wants to say something which is obvious. So I'm afraid there is no disagreement. Whatever Congress says, the BJP accepts. Whatever BJP says, the Congress accepts.
Correct.
And you have the 50% reservation ceiling. And the Congress, in fact, taunts that if it comes to power, Rahul Gandhi, has that empty red book that he flaunts. He says, first thing I will do is to remove that ceiling. And BJP mocks him. But in Telangana, BJP voted for removal of that ceiling.
True.
BJP was one of the votaries for it.
Yeah.
So,
On reservation, I think you're right. One of
but
the
again,
books.
if I can take 30 more seconds.
Please.
Again, I do not blame the politicians because, as I said, cholesterol, triglycerides come ne hypocrisy zyada. Look at the Supreme Court. Look at the hypocrisy and double standards of him. These guys are votary for 33% women reservations. They are votary for reservations. There is no reservation in Supreme Court. Why? There is no reservation in higher judiciary.
True.
If you want reservations elsewhere, do you think the work of a scientist or a doctor is less meritorious than the work of a judge? So I am against double standards. And most of the double standards are ordered and stamped by the Supreme Court. Ab jail jaunga to jaunga, aap log bacha lena.
No, but I think that's right. In fact, unfortunately, you'd read one of the books of Dr. Shashi Tharoor where he actually said that unfortunately it seems that the only way in which you can go forward these days is to be a backward. And this is, of course, one of the sad realities. One quick question.
There are a lot of things that Shashi Tharoor is saying now or what he said 4 years ago.
No, this actually did say long back, but yeah. So, but one quick question on something which has been taking the limelight on Twitter recently is the government spending on global PR lobbying. There have been a lot of words about how Pakistan has been doing it very efficiently in Washington and other places, employing the global communication and PR agencies to work. Is India doing it enough? Do we need to do it at all? Or what are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm not a votary for. I think if you speak the truth, if you do the right thing, you don't need any lobbying whatsoever.
Correct.
That is, in fact, my point is proven by the fact that Pakistan needs lobbying. And it may be in the short term because they've got Trump. People are talking about those conspiracy theories about Bitcoin and helping his son and all that. But in the long term, Pakistan always has been a failed state, and now it's so we don't want to become that. So I don't think. Having said that, there are some issues where not lobbying, I would say, but putting across our point of view is very important, and we've started doing that. In fact, if you look at 10 years ago and now, we have a lot of vocal ministers. I mean, you look at Dr. Jaishankar. He exposed the hypocrisy of the West brilliantly on the Ukraine thing. Recently, Piyush Goyal ji, you have Trump who's put 25% tariffs on us. We've said it openly. Our ministers, okay, I would have, wished had our prime minister also said so. But people in the lower rung have said it. That why has China not being slapped with 25% tariffs? Europe and China are buying more Russian energy than we are. So we are exposing the hypocrisy, which is good. But the fact of the matter is that the hypocrisy is making us suffer. While America did not put 25% tariffs on China, America put it on us.
True.
And the fact of the matter is we've not been able to shake them off. And right now, even though we ignored those tariffs, we continue to buy Russian oil. In fact, we increased our quanta of Russian oil in September. America went ahead, obviously, and then put sanctions on the Russian oil companies. But there also, so now obviously it would reduce. But you look at Germany and UK, they've got exemptions from America to continue to buy oil from those very Russian companies. And Piyush Goyal was the one who exposed it. And the shameless UK minister said, well, come to us. Nobody wants to come to you, you failed state. We're better than you. So yeah, I would want it. And this thing about let's not interfere in other nations' affairs. We've suffered a lot because of that. Let's call out the hypocrisy of everyone. And I think our ministers should do that absolutely from the rooftops.
Fantastic. I think that's clock striking 5 minutes past 8 o'clock. Thank you so much, Dr. Ranganathan, for that wonderful evening that he has been able to give to us. I remember people asking what is the role of government in a state, and somebody told me this couplet I was trying to find on my phone. It says कि तुम्हारी फाइलों में गांव का मौसम गुलाबी है. which is how it is. तुम्हारी फाइलों में गांव का मौसम गुलाबी है, मगर ये आंकड़े झूठे हैं या दावा किताबी है. So you never know, but of course, one thing that we can take away from Dr. Ranganathan's talk is the kind of passion he has for India. I mean, being a scientist, I think he spoke better than most of the economists can talk about India. If there is one message we need all the young people here, is that we need to be vociferous about our opinions about our country as much as it is about our family. And thank you so much. A big thank you to Dr. Iyer from Arambh Talks for facilitating the visit of Dr. Ranganathan. It has been an absolute pleasure. Once again, thank you everybody for turning up in large numbers on a Sunday evening
And
as
I
well.
always begin my talk by saying I'm always ever invited to any place once. So will I be invited again? Thank you. Such a legend.
No, in fact, at AMA, we always say that once you come here, there's no going back. So we look forward to having you again. Once
Very
again, thank you so much, Shrikant Ayerji, for
Thank you.
facilitating the visit. Thank you so much once again, and we look forward to having you back sooner than later, and everybody.